Hi, everyone. We are having a conversation today. So many of y'all are asking, what now? What can we do to help with the mass deportations and the lack of due process? And so I thought it would be really helpful to have a conversation with the founder of Immigrant Defense Law Center, IMDEF. I've been posting them a lot. I've donated to them. Lindsay is the founder and executive director, and so we're going to have a conversation. If you find this helpful, I just wanted to give her this platform to tell us what's happened the last few weeks and where to go from here. Let me find her. Oh gosh, it's always hard to find. Oh, there it is. This would be a great conversation. Oops, let me see. Um, Hi, Lindsay.
Hi.
How are you? Put this one.
I would say good, but we are, very, very busy right now.
Oh my gosh, I can imagine. I'm so happy to give you the microphone in this moment because your work is so important. Um, what you're doing, I just told everybody what we're doing, but we're having a conversation with Lindsay, who's the executive director and founder of the Immigrant Defenders Law Center. I've tagged them many times. They keep posting everything that you guys are doing. They specialize in legal defense of immigrant communities, representing thousands of adults and children in Southern California. I met Lindsay in 2018. We went to the border together. And that's when I really got to understand the work that you guys do and also understand our process. I had no idea about some of the stories and the laws and the rules that you've told us. You've educated me on since then. And it's crazy that we're back at this place and, from 2018 to now. And so many people are just asking, what now? The protest happened, the march happened. Now there's this new directive about focusing on democratic cities with the ICE raids. And so, can you lay out for folks what's happened in the last few weeks in Southern California with ICE and kind of what's different now versus then when we were at the border and, you know, years and years ago?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for spotlighting this issue and shining a light. It's so incredibly important, and we're so just incredibly grateful to you for caring about this issue for so many years, and especially now, because as you said, things have dramatically shifted here in Los Angeles over the last few weeks.
Mm.
It really started for us around May 20th when we started to see people who were doing everything right, who were showing up to their court hearings, people who had, in many cases, come in through appointment system at the border. They were doing everything the government had asked them to do, and they were getting picked up at court hearings. That escalated, you know, 1,000 times about 10 days ago on Friday, June 6th, where we started to see large scale raids here in the LA area. And, as you mentioned, we know that this is part of a political targeting of the Los Angeles area for what our city stands for, as an organization that was founded in my living room here in Los Angeles. This is really striking at the heart of who we are as a city, about the values that we hold as a city. In Los Angeles, we have more than 900,000 people who are undocumented. And that, means that people whose children go to our schools, 1 in 5 children in LAUSD schools, people working in every single industry that we have here in Los Angeles are undocumented. So these attacks on the immigrant community here really hit at the heart of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And I can see that, not just from the work that we've had over the last couple of weeks, responding at the detention centers, responding when people are being picked up, going and demanding to see warrants and hold the government accountable, but also because the car wash down the street from me is now closed. The farmers markets all over the city were near empty this weekend, because people are afraid,
Yeah.
and it's not safe for people to be out in our communities right now.
Yeah. And there's funds for that too. I've actually posted a couple of, people who are sponsoring families who are telling them don't go to work. We will sponsor your family so you can stay home and be safe. Um, Tell me about some of your clients. You always have really um, great ways to humanize the issue. And I feel like people, the do it the right way, you're not following the rules. This kind of narrative isn't accurate, but also when you talk about specific clients that you have, it humanizes this issue in a way that I think we need to hear. Can you tell me about some of those? Obviously, you don't have to tell me names.
Yeah. So, I think this is so important because what we're hearing from the Trump administration right now is that they are targeting, I'll use their language, the worst of the worst, the people with criminal convictions, who they say, should not be in the United States. And who we are seeing being targeted in the raids in Los Angeles right now, it is such a different picture. I spent yesterday afternoon, Father's Day, up at the Adelanto detention facility, which is about 2 hours from here in downtown LA. And one of the people that I met there was someone who was picked up, pulled over by ICE earlier this week. He's lived in the United States for 17 years. He's never had any criminal history in Guatemala nor here in the United States. And what the one moment that he started to cry during our conversation was when I asked if he had any children, and he said, "I do. I have an 11-year-old son. He's a U.S. citizen. He was born here." And I said to him, "I'm so sorry that it's Father's Day and you're not able to be with your son."
Yeah.
And he said, he started to tear up a bit, and he said, "I'm so sorry that I'm here too." He said, "I'm even more sorry that tomorrow is the first day that my son is going to a summer camp program that he's so excited about, and that he can't bring him to that camp." And he
Mm.
said, "I always bring him to school. I bring him to camp. That's where we talk in the mornings." And I just saw in that moment, really the ripple effects that these deportations, these raids will have in our communities, because it is not just a tragedy for that family, but that was someone that, to fly in the face of the rhetoric that we're hearing, was
Yeah.
on his way to work. He was in his work truck when he was pulled over. He wasn't doing he wasn't speeding. He didn't take a wrong turn. He was just pulled over for being a man who they believed looked like he might be undocumented, driving a gardener's truck. Like we see all over our communities all the time. And
Yeah.
now that little boy will be traumatized,
Yeah.
for the rest of his life, knowing that, his dad is now on the brink of deportation. We're lucky that, we were able to meet with him. I've been so inspired by the outpouring of support that we've seen from so many people, including last week when we called for pro bono lawyers to step up and take cases for free. And on a Friday evening, we had more than 100 lawyers raise their hands and come to a Zoom call. And, we will be able to provide support to that family. But there have been hundreds
Yeah.
of people like that
Yeah,
picked up.
how many people can you not help? Because
Right.
just the
So
sheer numbers.
the numbers are absolutely, what we have never seen here in Los Angeles in such a short period of time. Just on that first weekend, last weekend, there were more than 300 people picked up in a matter of 48, 72 hours. By, midweek last week, we had a list of over 140 people that had called our hotline requesting free legal assistance while they're detained. And they include people who have been here for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
Most of the people we've met with so far have been here at least 10 years, many of them 20 plus years. A lot of them have US citizen children.
Yeah.
It's just the need for us to be able to get those folks out of detention. And when I say detention, people might not realize that what I'm really talking about is a prison
Prison.
run by ICE.
Yeah.
People are shackled at the ankles and the wrists sometimes when they come into court. They look like any other federal prisoner in the United States. So these are people who have been, taken from their places of work, sometimes while their kids were at camp or school down the street, people who've been, pulled
Yeah.
over, often racially profiled in our communities, and sent to a prison.
Yeah.
And, it's up to all of us to continue to tell their stories, because at this moment, while they're sitting there in that detention center, they're unable to speak for themselves.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many videos. I encourage people to go see the difference between, criminal versus an offense, right? Like even the word illegal is not correct. Can you touch on that a little bit? Because I feel like we can't hear it enough to try to explain to people this is, it's an undocumented status versus a criminal
Yeah.
offense.
So, someone not having legal status in the United States by itself is not a criminal offense. And one of the things to understand is that when people are charged with a criminal offense, there are a lot of constitutional rights that immediately apply, including the right to have a lawyer represent you. On the other side, even though you can be sent to prison, an ICE prison, even though you can be sent, exiled from your community and sent back to a place where your life might be in danger, you don't have a right to an attorney in that process that is paid for by the government. And that's why services like Immigrant Defenders and so many of our partners are so important, because while there are many rights that apply in criminal custody, many of those are often trampled upon when someone is in immigration custody. And,
So, yeah,
and just to mention, and so many people who have come to the United States have followed all of the rules.
yeah,
Seeking asylum in the United
hmm,
States is legal.
yeah.
Regardless of your manner of entry into the United States, you are part of a legal process. So while people are sitting in those immigration detention centers, it's really important to remember that they are being held for an administrative offense, not for a criminal offense. And, they, like every other single person in the United States, have a right to due process, which means they
Yeah.
have a right to defend themselves. They have a right to a legal process. And we've seen, the Trump administration across the board find those due process rights.
Yeah.
Really, those are fundamental fairness issues. They find them inconvenient for their plans for mass deportation. We saw that with people like my client, Andre Hernandez Romero, the gay makeup
Yeah.
artist who was sent to El Salvador with no process. And we're seeing it now with the lack of access to legal counsel and the lack of process for people who are being held in these
But
ICE
when does
prisons.
this stop? Like, I mean, I think that's the thing that's most worrying is like the Trump administration is now like doubled down on not giving due process. And public perception is that these people don't deserve it because they're not citizens. um it's so scary,
Yeah.
and I mean, I feel helpless. I can't, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an immigration lawyer. I just want to, like a lot of us want to do, what can we do, how can we help? The march, was obviously effective, I think, in letting the public know, like a lot of people don't agree with the Trump administration's policies. And so when people are doing it, quote unquote, the right way and going to their court hearings and going to their, checking in when they're called to go and be checked in, and then getting picked up at the courthouses, getting picked up while they're trying to do it the right way. It just feels like hopeless. It feels
Yeah.
hopeless.
Yeah. Well, I think, really, we can't give up hope. And I didn't become a lawyer to live in a place that doesn't have the rule of law. And I think it's up to, yes, lawyers to hold the administration accountable, hold our government accountable to the Constitution, to fight for that, because that's a fight none of us can afford to lose. That's a fight worth having. And I think what we're seeing happen to immigrants today, to people who are being rounded up on the streets of Los Angeles, and what we're seeing happen at the border, it's not just an immigrant rights issue. It's an issue about the future of our democracy and the country
Yeah.
that we want to live in.
Yeah.
That being said, what you're saying is exactly right in that we are seeing people that are doing everything that is being asked of them getting targeted. I saw this with a family that came to court about 2 weeks ago in downtown Los Angeles. A little boy, he was 8 years old. He was there with his mom and dad. We went into the courtroom. The ICE prosecutor moved to dismiss the dad's case, which meant that they were going to try and detain the dad. As they exited the courtroom, even though the dad had asked, I want to stay in this case with my son and my wife, they dismissed his case. And as they exited, right in front of this little 8-year-old boy who was sitting there in his school uniform, they actually detained the dad, handcuffed him. These were agents that were wearing plain clothes, and they pushed him into a service elevator away from the family. And I can tell you, as someone that, looked at that little boy's face, as we descended on the elevator down to the lobby of the federal building, it looked like he had aged 2 years. So the consequences for the individual families who are being affected couldn't be more dire. And I would just say that getting out in the streets and protesting and making your voice heard is so important. Things like
Mhm.
this, we're so grateful to you, Eva, for shining a light, letting these stories get out. But it's also about remembering who is the main character in this story, who are the families that are most impacted, because the media is really focusing a lot on the protests, and they're important. It was so important to see tens of thousands of people right here in
Yeah.
downtown LA and across the country.
Yeah.
But the day-to-day families that are being impacted are the stories that we need to lift up and highlight so that we never forget that this is really an affront to who we should be striving to be as Americans.
Yeah.
It's an affront to the values that so many of us hold. And if it can happen to these families today, if it can happen to those men who've been sent to El Salvador with no due process, it can happen to any of us tomorrow. It
Yeah.
could happen to you. It could happen to me. So
Hmm.
this is a fight, as I said, that none of us can afford to lose, because the fight for immigrant rights is really about the fight for the country that we want to live in.
Yeah, and I think, we need all the allies we can get. I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm continuing to do what I can from wherever I am in the world. And I feel like, you know, if you're an ally, you're welcome, right? Like if you can
Yes.
post, if you can march, if you can call your congressperson, call them. Everybody has to show up in the way that they can. And I think that we're going to need all of these ways, to
Yes.
change the Trump policies. You started a bond fund, which I think we also don't think about. Like, oh yeah, these people need to be bailed out
Yeah.
in
So
some
this is
circumstances.
our friends actually at Clue Justice, which is a faith-based organization here in Los Angeles, started this in collaboration with the Rapid Response Network. Chirla, Carecen, IMDEF, all of the organizations came together, and we created the Detained Immigrant Bond Fund. I hope the link is in the chat for folks.
Yeah,
That bond fund is so important because what that will do, that story that I told you about that little boy who watched his dad get handcuffed, the story of the dad who is at the Adelanto detention facility as we speak. This bond fund will allow us, when ICE or an immigration judge sets a bond for someone, it will allow us to pay it for them. And really,
yeah,
what that means is that it will allow us to pay that bond to get dads, moms, brothers, sisters home with their families. It will
yeah,
allow us to get grandmas and grandpas who've been picked up while selling fruit on the side of the road back with their families. So it's called a bond fund, which some people may not be familiar with that term, but
yeah,
really what it is a fund to help us reunite families,
yeah.
and bring them back together because all families in LA deserve to be
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that is it. The family separation, taking babies out of mother's hands, separating an 11-year-old boy from his father. Like, that's what this is about. And I would think that that's where there's a touch point of humanity, at least in family separation. And so, um, the other thing that I found so surprising was that they're deporting veterans. I
Yeah,
wouldn't think that anybody who served our country, protected our country, would even be up for a deportation.
right.
Um, that's happening.
Yeah, people are often surprised that we have an entire team here at IMDEF that works on deported veterans issues.
Wow.
Under the Biden administration, there was a program that worked to bring deported veterans back to the United States. And even just this weekend, we had someone who was called into an appointment because they are trying to effectuate their deportation, even though they were just recently brought back.
Hmm.
These are cases where people often fought in Iraq, in the Gulf Wars. They are people who saw combat, legal permanent residents who came back. Oftentimes, we'll find diagnosed with PTSD, and during that journey of having PTSD, sometimes living on the streets, had a criminal conviction that made them deportable from the United States. And immigration law is so unforgiving that even in cases like that, even where somebody has, had combat veteran experience in our armed forces, they still are eligible for deportation. So MDEF and
Wow.
partners across the country have worked hard to bring many of these veterans back,
Yeah.
but there are moves now to deport them from the United States.
Yeah. That is, I that doesn't even make sense to me. None of
Yeah,
this makes sense to me.
right.
The last question, because I know you're actually very, very busy. What can anybody do to help other than donating? What are some other things that we can, ways that we can support IMDEF?
So I think one of the most important things, especially for all of your followers who are outside of LA and New York and outside of these cities that are actually being targeted right now, across the country, we need people to show up to town halls. We need people
Okay.
to be calling their elected representatives, especially when their elected representatives are not traditional immigrant rights supporters. It's so important. We know we were in DC last week talking to folks on both sides of the aisle, and we know that they tally those calls. They look at the issues that their constituents care about. So that could not be more important because it will take all of us
Yeah.
together working for this to be able to make sure that we're protecting families here in the
Yeah.
US.
Yeah.
The other thing that people can do is know that people are scared right now. Here in Los Angeles, I know people are not going to work. They're not going to school. We have restaurants, farmers markets that have closed down because people are afraid.
Yeah.
That's happening across the country in big ways and small. I would really say, it's important for people to reach out to their immigrant neighbors,
Yeah.
to talk to them, to say, I'm here to support you. If they're afraid to go out, make sure that you are asking that they have, do they need groceries? Can you
Do they
deliver
need
groceries to
groceries?
them?
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are really important things that people can do to help.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I also think, having these conversations is so helpful. I think, my followers obviously know where I stand and uh probably understand all of this that you're saying. It's the people that don't agree with you that I also want to touch and also want to reach. And I appreciate you telling us these stories because it helps people understand. Oh, okay, it's a mother. Oh, okay, it's a dad. It's a little boy. It's a little girl. And I just think we need way more compassion. I've been saying this as I've been screaming it as long as I've been working with farm workers.
Yeah.
In 2004 there was laws being dismantled for farm workers and you know we I just can't believe that we haven't moved forward with protecting any of these human right issues for our community. And I just am so grateful that there's an organization like yours, and I hope people will repost this and share this. And I hope that you get all of the support that you need, whether that's donations or reposting this or just letting people know what's happening. Um, Thank you for your time, and thank you for your energy, and thank you for your intelligence. I feel like you're an angel. For as long as I've known you, you're an angel doing God's work, and I just want to say thank you.
Well, Thank you so much. And it's not just me. We have an incredible team of almost 200 advocates here at IMDEF that are fighting every single day. And we are part of a much bigger movement here in Los Angeles, across the country, that is fighting for a better future, not just for immigrants, but for all of us here in the United States. So thank you so much, Eva, for shining a light on this. I remember years ago being with you at the border, and you asked what's changed. The fight is even harder
Now,
now for what we were trying to do then, but
yeah.
I still have hope. I know that we need to, the only fight we're going to lose is the one that we give up on. And I'm just really grateful to have you in this fight alongside us.
Thank you for all of your work, and I'm sure you're going to get a lot of a lot more lawyers wanting to donate their time with y'all. Thank
Awesome.
you so much, Lindsay. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.